Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast, a platform that celebrates the rich tapestry of professional diversity, with a particular emphasis on empowering women. We aim to foster diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA, for all, while recognizing and championing the achievements of everyone as a central pillar of our journey. In our conversations, we explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to diversity and empowerment. I have the privilege of chatting with Megan F. Raymond on today's Virtual Water Cooler Chat. Megan is one of the top 50 women in Patent Trial and Appeal Board, PTAB Trials, representing clients in over 100 post-grant proceedings to date. Megan also tries patent cases in federal district courts and in the International Trade Commission and argues appeals before the federal circuit. Megan is ranked in Chambers USA as a leading practitioner for intellectual property patent. Chambers describes her as having expertise in PTAB proceedings and describes her as a very smart and capable lawyer who represents clients in a very effective way. Megan has also been recognized by IAM 1000 and the Legal 500 as a rising star who can handle difficult arguments and witnesses with grace and effectiveness. She was also named to the PTAB Bar Association's Top 50 Women in PTAB Trials list in 2019 and 2021. Megan also authored the latest edition of PLI's treatise, Post-Grant Proceedings Before the Patent Trial and Appeal Board. Megan currently serves as Vice President of the PTAB Bar Association. Megan is also the chair of the Federal Circuit Bar Association's Patent Litigation Committee. She previously served as a chair of the Federal Circuit Bar Association's PTAB and Mock Argument Committees. She also served previously as the vice chair of the PTAB Bar Association's Programming Committee and Women's Committee. On the Women's Committee, she worked on preparing the PTAB Bar Association's Women at the PTAB Report on Gender Diversity in the PTAB. She received the Federal Circuit Bar Association's George Hutchinson Committee Award, recognizing committee leadership in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2023. She is a frequent speaker on developments in patent law, including topics primarily related to the PTAB. Megan was the managing editor of Virginia Law and Technology at the University of Virginia School of Law. Before law school, Megan was a research fellow at the National Institutes of Health in the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Laboratory of Immunoregulation, Center for Biologics, Evaluation and Research, where she co-authored papers on vaccine design and development. Megan received her AB in Biochemical Sciences from Harvard University and her JD from the University of Virginia School of Law. She was a clerk to the Honorable Haldane Robert Mayer of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit.
Hello, Megan. How are you doing today?
Great. Good morning, Ashley.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I know that you are super busy and really a top-notch PTAB practitioners among other things. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to talk to you today.
I'm just going to get right in and ask the questions. Who is Megan Raymond and what actually lit the fire for you to choose this legal path?
Sure. So growing up, I had a few different possible careers in mind. I thought I might be a baker. I liked baking. Then I thought I might be a veterinarian. I liked animals. And then there were things I liked to do that felt expensive, like figure skating. So I thought I might need to make money. And so I thought maybe I'd be a doctor. But I also think the idea of treating animals and then treating humans was appealing. Fast forward a bit, and I sort of realized that I struggled being around people in pain to the point that I would almost sort of pass out. And I thought maybe being a doctor wouldn't be the right choice. But I had spent, time in high school, and then I was in college at the time really focusing on science. And I really liked science. And I also didn't want to sort of throw out my science background. So I started thinking about other ways that I might be able to use my science background in an eventual career. At the time, I had a ballroom partner in college who was actually a law student. And he would talk about, his 1L classes. And they sounded really interesting to me. And I sort of also thought, that sounds more interesting than organic chemistry currently. And I started thinking about how I might be able to use my science background in law. During college summers, really, I had started doing research at a lab on the NIH campus, actually within the FDA, though. And I was doing bench research on HIV vaccines. My lab chief at the time spent half of his time doing bench research and half of his time doing FDA regulatory work. And so I actually thought at the time, maybe I could go to law school and do FDA regulatory work. That became the new plan. I started law school still thinking I would do FDA regulatory work. I interviewed for summer associate positions saying I was interested in doing FDA regulatory work full time. Then, I took some more classes, thought maybe patent litigation made a lot of sense. Also for a period of time, thought I might do tax because I really enjoyed my tax courses. And then ultimately towards the end of, law school, I ended up applying for a clerkship and I got a federal circuit clerkship. With that, I thought maybe since I would be doing a lot of patent law for the year, I should just become a patent litigator. That's ultimately, how I ended up in patent law.
A couple of things that's really interesting because you talk about baking, you talk about organic chemistry, and I want to share a really quick fun story. A friend of mine from college, she was a pre-med major at the time, and she always was talking about like how hard the organic chemistry was and everything. I mean, she's now a doctor. And the thing that was really interesting is that she had two daughters. One is a sophomore at Berkeley now, and the younger one, when she was like maybe 8 years old, she really liked baking, and she asked her parents, because both parents are medical doctors, would I be able to afford our current lifestyle if I choose to be a baker? And the mom said, probably not. She was like, okay, well, I guess I need to become an orthodontist. I'm like, why orthodontist? And so she goes like, so I can actually support my hobby. 8 years old.
I think I wanted to make sure that I could support my hobby of figure skating when I grew up. So
She had something different in mind, but it was like, oh my God, when you were talking about that, it was like, oh, that's very practical minded. You need to have a job to support your hobby. You talk about figure skating. So did you go to Lake Placid to try like skeleton?
Yes.
Tell me more.
Well, my first trip to Lake Placid was actually for a figure skating competition. So growing up, I did competitive gymnastics and competitive figure skating. And being competitive is probably a significant part of my personality and probably also part of how I became a litigator. But my first trip to Lake Placid was actually for a skating competition when I was fairly young. Skated and, competed in the 1980 Olympic rink, things like that, all pretty cool. And went back to train one summer. And then I think the trip that you're thinking of, Ashley, was more recent just because of sort of my love for Lake Placid and its history of skating and outdoor winter activities that I love. My fiance and I went back to Placid in the winter. And as it turns out, you can not only do bobsled, which is pretty well known as something that one can actually try out in Lake Placid, but you can also try skeleton as well as luge. And I don't know, growing up when I would watch the Winter Olympics, of course, I'd want to watch the skating because that was my sport. But the other thing that I really wanted to watch was luge. I don't know if they had skeleton quite yet, but the ability to sort of go down a slide head first when you're usually not allowed to do that as a kid, very fun. I recommend trying skeleton to everyone out there. You can, in the winter, there are times that you can go and sign up and, you leave from about halfway down the track. And it was just super fun. After that, I actually wanted to find like a skeleton camp for adults to try to learn how to do it better and have a chance of taking more runs down the track.
Well, you know that I have a friend who is a Winter Olympic skeleton player, and I am bringing her to DC next year. She said the furthest that she has gone is Lake Placid within the East Coast, but each time is for training and competition. I was like, have you been to DC or New York or anything like that? She was like, no. I said, well, we have to make something happen. So we're going to talk about like the specifics, but I think I'm going to bring her here and say, wow, you're here. You must well do a workshop. She was like, okay. And so that should be fun. I'll keep you posted on that.
There aren't any skeleton tracks south of Lake Placid on the East Coast, so there would be a good reason for her to have not come farther south. But
well, she's coming to see Ashley.
That's worth
DC.
it.
That is really amazing. Now, let's talk about Groombridge rule, Baughman install. How long has it been now? Is it over 2 years?
It's been a little more than a year and a half. It'll be 2 years come November.
The word that I would use is like, you guys are growing like, it was like gangbuster growth. So can you talk a little bit about, like, you came from a law firm and now from this firm that has amazing practitioners and amazing team that actually experiencing exponential growth. How do you feel about that?
It's been a wild but a very exciting ride in a sense. If you had asked me even just 2 years ago, how do you start a law firm? I would have said, that's in the category of how big is the universe? It's just sort of a mind-blowing question. It was one of those things that always boggled my mind when I knew someone who went off and, hung their own shingle or started their own firm. The question of how do you do that and how do you figure that out just seemed almost overwhelming. But, the decision was made to start the new firm. I was asked first day of the announcement almost if I would come over and join as a partner. I tend to be a very risk-averse individual. So despite the skeleton.
I couldn't tell if it was for the skeleton.
And, my colleagues and my friends were all going. And so, I thought I'd take the chance and give it a try. We were very fortunate. It was a friendly departure from my old firm. Almost all of my colleagues and almost all of our clients came with us. I think by being part of a firm that's only patent litigation, people really know what we do. Sometimes when you're in a big firm, people sort of forget that there's this smaller group inside the firm that has this really particular expertise. And I think we've been able to, do more highlighting of that, having our own firm, having our name and building a reputation as a group. And so we've been very fortunate that we came over, with a group that was about the same size as we had at Paul Weiss. We've been able to grow our client base and grow the number of attorneys as a result. I don't think we've been trying to grow for growth's sake, but when you have the demand from the clients, you can manage to hire more people. And of course, to me, it's really important that when you have talent, that you nurture the talent and you don't burn out talent, being able to create a place where people can enjoy their work, appreciate their work, be appreciated by their colleagues and their clients, and do that in a way that it's not overwhelming to the rest of life, I think is really important. So in DC, we started with 4 or 5 people, and now we're building out offices. We've had 4 more people start since then, I think, and 2 more in October at least. And then, of course, we have our New York office and a Tokyo office, which was another adventure to undertake in the first year of creating a firm. I will say some of my friends from clerking had always sort of talked about starting a clerk firm. And this isn't exactly what we talked about, but it's pretty close because a number of my sort of friends through the years are here.
What do you think that contribute to such exponential growth for your firm? What factors do you think contribute to such growth?
In a sense, I think we were lucky in the beginning. For whatever reason, when we struck out on our own, there was a lot of excitement from people that we knew outside the firm. We had clients who were really excited, former colleagues who were really excited. There hadn't been sort of a patent boutique that had formed in quite a while, at least sort of the size that we were, of 20 some odd attorneys at the time. I think there were some smaller ones, but in terms of sort of a team that could handle, multiple litigations at the same time, I don't know that there had been too many of those in recent years. I think people saw the possibility of being able to do that. I think excited some people on the outside. And then I think seeing what we are doing and able to accomplish as a firm the size we are. 2 months after forming, we had a group that was off doing a trial in Miami. We probably do maybe 5 trials a year for 20 some odd attorneys, which is, a pretty huge number. And I think when you know who the people involved are, it's easier when you're in a smaller firm to know who's doing the work. I think we've created a platform that where clients know who's doing the work. Clients get to know the people who are doing the work. Hopefully that means when you're doing good work, it leads to more work from those clients and the ability to highlight your work to potential new clients.
Would you like to hear my thoughts on why you guys are successful?
I would love to, Ashley.
Well, the first thing I think is from a branding perspective. The bigger the firms are, the more your niche practice got lost. So by having a firm that is basically being known for the PTAB or litigations or whatever it is, life sciences, that I think allow your team to basically be known for that. You're not trying to cultivate everyone as your client. There's only certain clients that can really be your target audience. And I think that niche is very important. And the reason why I kind of know that is because when I started my own company, I tried to be everything for everyone, because that's what I have been most of my life. I was like, you want me to do this? Sure. But then now it's like, no, I don't think so. So there is one branding strategist that talk about this is diluted focus, diluted results. So by specializing, I think that makes it easier for people to get to know who are the Groombridge founders and the team. So that's number one. Second one is about the warmth. I have not visited the DC office, but I visited the New York office. Jennifer Wu was actually on my podcast last year. I knew of you. I said, do you think Megan would want to be on the panel? He was like, yeah, sure. I won't be on there, but you could ask Megan. So that connection, the warmth, and I really do appreciate that because Groombridge has actually supported BPG on multiple events. So that's one of the other things is I also, when I went to New York, I visited a couple of clients, and you guys are not clients, but you're friends. I call you friends of BPG. So when I went there, it was like, Jennifer, I don't quite know how to pronounce her last name,
Jennifer Denault, yes.
Yeah. She's like, would you like to come to the office? I said, I need to have a conference call. She was like, I can give you a conference room. I'm like, okay. And then before you know it, she was texting me. She was like, Jennifer actually has time to have lunch. Would you like to have lunch? I was like, who would turn down a lunch offer from Jennifer Wu, right? So I had lunch with Josephine, Jennifer at the Espresso Cafe downstairs from your New York office. And I also met your paralegal team.
They're wonderful.
And they are amazing young kids. And I hope that they don't mind that I call them kids. And they showed me the cow behind the door, the base and everything. It was just like really warm. And from the DC office, my vice co-chair is Sarab. He was also on some events. So I think that part, so the niche, the warmth, and also obviously you got to be good at what you do because otherwise nobody else would hire, right? So I think those three factors are what I see objectively. Some of them not so objectively because I've been friends with you guys now. So that was my thought.
I think that's right. In forming the firm, there were a couple of visions. And I think one was to have fun doing what we do. And I think if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to be very good at it. Another was thinking about what clients want these days, which is expertise and being able to staff cases with, people who have real expertise. So not only, having more senior people compared to the number of junior people, but that also allows you to be a great training vehicle to make sure that the junior folks are getting really incredible training by working directly with the partners. One of the other considerations, I think, was, the ability to promote talent. And that goes hand in hand, I think, with things we'll talk about later, like, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. Another thing is just, being a small firm, we can be flexible, whether it's with respect to hiring and the way we do hiring, but also with respect to billing and things like that. So, having a smaller platform where you have 10 partners and you can email them and say, can I do this? Can I do that? As opposed to, a larger firm where necessarily just because it's larger, you have to have more levels of approvals and more of a process. So it allows us to be a little bit more nimble and quick with not only requests from clients, but requests from our colleagues.
Yes, totally. What will be 3 words that you think best describe Megan? I know it's hard.
Hard. I guess I would start with tenacious, which probably applies sort of personally and professionally. I don't know, like for figure skating, I don't know that I was the most naturally talented figure skater, but I worked really hard at it and sort of found a way to succeed in the sport. And professionally, I had a really long track to partnership with some changes of firm along the way in order to frankly stay with a team that, we had built at my first firm. And then in the move to Paul Weiss and the move here, it was a really long journey. There were times when I thought about maybe I will go in-house or, should I do something different, but ultimately stuck with it thanks to, some great mentors along the way. So I think sort of tenaciousness would be one. I think I'd have to say lucky, and people might say you make your own luck, but, I had parents who supported me, clients who encouraged me, even in the partnership journey, clients who would say, you deserve this, you're a great lawyer, motivator, keep going. And again, colleagues who mentored and sponsored me along the way. And then perhaps the third is I think I'm a fairly calm person. My fiance would probably tell you whether it's something little, oh, there's an ant climbing up a wall, or, I chopped my own foot off. He'd say, my reaction would be sort of goodness gracious, which I think in the context of, a war room or a trial room for work, or in the context of a competitive situation for sports, is a useful sort of skill perhaps to have. And those are probably three words, but then just sort of enjoying the journey and the people along the way.
And take challenge as they come.
Yeah, you got to take the challenges as they come. Sometimes the best laid plans are not the plans as they work out.
Absolutely. What fun facts would you like to share with our audience about you?
Perhaps I'll tell another story, which might be a little bit more insight into my personality. So I've already mentioned growing up, I did, competitive skating. I also did competitive gymnastics. Early in college, I had to stop skating due to an injury, and I took up competitive ballroom. That's, of course, how I met my ballroom partner, who sort of was part of the move to going to law school. But the competitive ballroom wasn't really enough sort of competition in my life. Junior year, I became friends with an admitted student, Adam Grant, now a professor and author and all around awesome human. And he was a springboard diver. And growing up, I had always wanted to do springboard diving. But my mother had said she was not going to go to practice and watch me hurl my head towards a diving board. So springboard diving was never something I got to try out growing up. One day, I decided I really wanted to do it. So I decided to walk across the river to our athletic complex in college and walk into the diving coach's office, Division I NCAA diving team, and say, I want to dive with the team. So I told him I wanted to do that. He looked at me like I was crazy. I explained why I thought I could do it. And he said, well, you can come start training with us. And if you come back in the fall with a complete list of dives, you can dive for the team. And so I spent my summer working on the challenge of, getting a complete list of competitive dives. And I got it, and then returned to college and thought, I don't know that I actually want to train mornings and evenings, my senior year and give up quite that much. But the challenge of having to get to that point of, getting enough dives that I would be in a point that I could potentially compete was something that I just loved. It was, just incredibly fun summer and challenge and, getting to do something that, one had always wanted to do. And I think as we get older, as an adult, you think I can't start a new sport, for instance. So actually, like before COVID had hit, I had gone back to do adult gymnastics again. Having done it as a kid, I hadn't done it a long time. So I went back and sort of picked that up again. Although every week I left, I just was thankful that my head was still attached and I hadn't broken anything. I love a good challenge.
And you're definitely tenacious. I mean, Adam Grant is one of my favorite authors. I got all of his books, including Audible. I think it started out with Give and Take.
Yes.
And, a lot of other books. I love Hidden Potential, what is it? Think Again. I have all of them. And I follow him on his posts and stuff like that. So it's really amazing that you actually know my favorite author. I'm going to have to try to get an autograph at some point.
His thinking about his work has been a really interesting part of starting a new firm, because there is so much data out there and so many studies about how to effectively run an organization. Mm-hmm. And having a small firm that's newer sort of gives a platform and the ability to, maybe create the mousetrap better and differently this time, in terms of how you do training and in terms of how you give feedback, in terms of, just how to structure the firm, interact with the team, how to encourage people to do their best, how to figure out how to get the best out of people, how to make sure that folks are feeling valued in their jobs and feeling like their jobs do have value, making sure that, team members know how much their work is appreciated by clients, all of those things.
I think belongingness is something that is really missing in the overall work culture. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love Adam Grant. I love Simon Sinek. And that actually have a huge impact in how I actually shaped my own company. I was a case manager. I was a patent litigation pretty much all the way, construction litigation first. I'm still friends with one of the former litigation partner there, and we're friends. I interviewed his son, who is a transformational coach now, and it was hilarious because he was like, I said, both of your parents are lawyers. Why are you not a lawyer? And he was like, yeah, because I've seen enough. So he decided that he wants to be a system engineer. And then eventually he does like Scrum Master. And then he's like an agile methodology transformation coach. So it's kind of interesting. I was like, I don't know what Scrum is. Let me go figure it out. And then I was like, maybe I'll interview you. And then his father was like very old school, very candor. And just basically, if you don't want to hear the truth, well, his version of the truth, don't come to me because I'm not going to miss any word. It's like litigation that sank or swim. And this is like 20 years ago or something like that. So it is really relevant, in that sense. It is still true, but sometimes the culture now is that you have to be much more careful in how you handle your feedback. So a lot of it still in that learning mode. So that's that. Let's talk about you as a treatise author. Well, actually, I know Bob Matthews. So Matthews also had a treatise, right? I think. Thank you for sending me the treatise. So I had the chance to look at it briefly. I have not studied everything. But it's so cool to know a treatise author. So can you talk about sort of like the decision of what made you to take that on besides like adult gymnastic, doing all kinds of things that is already very intense in your profession? I'm not sure that you have that much time to sleep, maybe, but taking on a challenge like that, what sort of propelled you to try to do this?
So I was approached about taking on the treatise back when I was at Paul Weiss and I was still at counsel. And it felt like an opportunity to not only get my name out there, but have something that was my own that I had full control over. And I think this is part of being in a big firm is that for many good reasons, you have less control over, your time, your schedule, things like that. But I was really fortunate in that the firm and my colleagues supported my taking on the project. And so I took it on knowing that, as the deadlines approach, I might well regret it. But, I think in my career, I've tended to try to say yes to interesting opportunities. There was one opportunity I said no to that had to do with an opportunity to work in Japan for a few years. But, I think you're always sort of told to take those jumps and take unusual opportunities when they come your way. And I also saw it as an opportunity perhaps to sort of help train some of our newer associates to PTAB by having them, help with the treatise and having them do some research and take on a section, a section on writing a petition, a section on a patent owner response. To me, it also provided a bit of a training opportunity. I've been involved in the PTAB since the first days of practice. And I think one of the reasons why I was pulled towards PTAB practice, there are a few reasons, but one of them was I was an associate and had the opportunity to be on the ground floor and kind of know everything about the PTAB, which, one couldn't do as an associate doing district court litigation. I continue to do district court litigation and appeals, but I had this opportunity to sort of really get my hands around a specialty of law. And so sort of having been around the PTAB and the PTAB practice since really the first days that it existed, I just thought it would be neat to have one place to try to put some of that knowledge that I've accumulated over the years. That's how I took it on. But I'd say a huge piece was, having some control over my schedule and what I was doing and the ability to say, I'm working on a treatise today.
Well, one of the things that when I was looking over, the first thing that I usually look at a book, I usually look at credits and acknowledgement, because that shows me how many people actually, this is the author's names there. There's like, it takes a village.
Absolutely.
And I was so happy to see that you acknowledged the research assistants. And you also acknowledged one of my former colleagues when I was at Howie, Siam Osman.
Yes.
I didn't even know where he went. But then we were at one of the DEIA workshop, a panel in DC, where you were also speaking as sort of like final keynote. And I was like, wait, I know you. We're both from Howie. Small world. The patent world is really small.
Siam is fantastic and was one of the original members of our DC office here. So I'm very grateful to him.
Yes. So I was like, oh, wow. So can we talk a little bit about non-attorney practitioners in this PTAB world? What do you think that they sort of like help contribute, and how do we actually give them a more active role in this PTAB practice?
For me and my PTAB practice, the paralegals are a key part of it. And we've also now recently at Groombridge, Baughman and Stone started hiring technical advisors who I had sort of two firms ago in the beginning of of building a PTAB practice. So I've worked with sort of patent agents or technical advisors for quite a long time doing PTAB work. They help us obviously with technical aspects of the case, but also I think just bring a fresh perspective to anything we're doing. So, they might help put together claim charts. They might help look at prior art and pick apart prior art arguments. They might look and try to find, inconsistencies between, something an expert said and something that they've previously published or something else out there that's known in science. But I think everyone can have a role on the team saying, this doesn't make sense. This argument doesn't make sense. It just doesn't seem credible, something like that. And, technical advisors can do that. And, even paralegals, when they're reading through a brief, they also have a role in saying, I read this sentence, but it doesn't make sense. I think our paralegals, not only in one might think about them as the filing day work, but in all of the work, helping us keep organized, keeping on top of the huge volume of documents that sometimes go into, certainly district court litigation, but even some PTAB cases these days, site checking, blue booking, all of those things, I think, paralegals can have a big role in contributing to, as well as, just pulling together, the beginning of a shell of something to sort of, maybe make what I'm going to do quicker. We have, for instance, for my cases, all of our cases here, we'll have an email distribution list for the team. The paralegals and technical advisors are always on that. They're not brought in just at the end of the case. They're always on the case. They're part of the case from day one. What can they contribute? I can run down 2 offices away to Siam, our paralegal's office, and he's on top of it. If I need something for the case, he knows where to get it for me. If I have a question about, where are the cases we have from this, he knows. He has his arms around the documents in the case, the cases that we've cited in the case. He is part of our sort of as our main PTAB filer, also just bringing a really positive attitude to the team. We couldn't do it without the paralegals and our tech advisors.
Thank you. So I think that for the paralegals, I really do appreciate you acknowledge him, obviously, rightly so, in your treatise. It's really mean a lot because a lot of times there's a segment of legal profession that was sort of forgotten. So for example, for VPG, when you are at big law firms, certain people are actually going to be assigned or niche into doing something, and other people may not always have opportunity to learn. I wasn't great at site checking when I was at my previous firm. I mean, I was a great filer, so I was niche in doing all the other fire emergency type of thing, but not great at site checking. So when I first came out to start my company, I have to do this because if you don't do that, you're turning away business. But I didn't feel comfortable. So I teamed up. I approached one of the professors that taught at Georgetown. She's like a guru of site checking, wrote so many books. So I contacted her from year one and say, I need you to train me. And so that's how our sort of site checking webinar. And then also eventually we turned it into on demand. I had my young ones to help with video editing. And so we are doing so many different things for all of those. But now for the site checking, I am actually learning how to basically, I think practice is the best way. It won't make you perfect. It will make you much better. And then also the anxiety sort of reduces a lot. So I was just getting some claim charts and I am training some young ones to basically take the on-demand course. And it has the intro, the bridging the gap and the advanced site checking. And as I take the course, do whatever you needed to do. And here's a claim chart and we're going to go through this. And after that, I will do second review. I won't bill my client because I'm using this as a training opportunity that reduce the client's sort of fees. But at the same time, I was just getting an email. It's if the word is over this, should I use block quote? I was you could recommend, and then the attorney will tell you either yes or no. And then it was what about this? I think it's claim 81. So I have to teach people how to read a patent. This is what an abstract is. This is where the drawings are. When you have the asterisk, that means the end of the patent. And this is where the claims are.
Yes.
I think this is claim 81, not 91. I said, you are right. Thank you for catching that. So I think that is the part I agree with you. With a bigger firm, with so much structure, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I think that for me, what was really great about BPG is autonomy. If I want to help someone, as long as within reason, I can actually do that. And I feel that I am contributing and it's making an impact.
I think a smaller place, there's more flexibility to let people use their talents, but there's also more of a safety net for people to try to learn and improve in areas maybe where they're not as strong, and giving them the opportunity to learn and to practice and to grow. I'm not one who thinks that every member on a team has to be the best at everything. I think what you need is a team where there's at least someone on the team who's best at something and someone else who's best at something else, such that you have a team that's the best at doing the job. But every individual person doesn't need to be the best at every individual need for the group. And I think finding those talents and nurturing those talents is a huge part of this. And I think, one of the biggest challenges in running a company and running a firm, and I'm sure, Ashley, you found this too, is finding and identifying talent. And so when you find and identify talent, and you want to nurture that talent and grow that talent and make sure that people, again, part of making sure that people feel included and are enjoying their work so that they stay. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off tangent here, but I think the ability and the flexibility for people to use their talents in a slightly smaller organization is probably a bit greater just because of that flexibility.
I mean, tangents are good sometimes because it means that this is an organic conversation. We are not planning anything. I think that the hardest for me is to have critical feedback, hard conversations, and you care. That's why you care about their growth, which is why you give them that feedback. And the feedbacks are not always positive. You could say that it's constructive, but it's really hard to hear.
Feedback is a thing that I think historically lawyers haven't done well. And I think that's one of the particular areas where I find the work that like Adam Grant and organizational behavior folks are doing is really interesting. Pulling in folks from the outside who are better at feedback. Even some of the consulting firms, frankly, are pretty good at a feedback model, and figuring out how to do that in the context of more of a law firm model, I think is a challenge, but it's a big growth opportunity. And I've heard this from someone in another firm, and internally here, sort of giving people, I think what Jen Wu would call glows and grows, even put as simply as that. Here are things that you're great at, here are places where you can grow, is sort of a way to frame it such that someone realizes that what you're trying to do is not criticize them for not being perfect, because no one's going to be perfect the first time they try to do something, but recognizing what they're already naturally doing really well in other areas where you think that they really can improve, that, they'll be able to put the work in and get better at.
Before we move on to DEIA, I think one of the things that I found myself having the autonomy to sort of like be a little bit more nurturing versus thinking was like, we got to meet the deadline, that type of thing. And it's like, yes, you have a lot of things going on, but we got to meet the deadline. It's really a difficult balance trying to stay away from this because I'm still responsible for the bottom line. If I miss the deadline for a client deadline, yes, I might have a lot of things going on. You might have that. I want to be caring, but how do I balance that? So this the fear in myself. So I'll tell you a funny, not so funny story. I got a text from one of my site checkers on Friday, and he's like, I'm about to lose power now. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like physical power, are you talking this metaphorically? No, we have a tornado watch. I'm like, why are you site checking? Don't you need to take cover? And then so I'm like, find myself struggling. I was like, I need to be more caring, and I need to tell her, don't worry about this. So I just basically said that I'll take two of the package that you're site checking. Yeah. So please be safe. And when you have power back on, then you let me know what you can handle.
I think that's right. Letting your team know that you're there for them and that you're there to back them up. Not only that you'll support their decisions, but things like if you lose power, I'm here, I'm online, I'll pick that piece up. Letting your team know that no piece of the project is beneath anyone, right? I mean, sometimes the folks who were more senior need to take on some work from, someone who's more junior because they're losing power, or because they have another case deadline, or because their kid is sick, because, their parent is sick, whatever the case may be. I think I was lucky when I was an associate that I worked with a number of partners, and particularly Steve Baughman, one of the founders of my current firm, who I always felt that they were there for me and they were ready to back me up if something came up. And I think that hopefully gives, team members some comfort and some feeling of calmness in the storm of what can be a big filing or a trial or, frankly, all of the deadlines that we're constantly facing in the legal profession that can make things a bit stressful.
I think that's the part that is like balancing my own fear about being an sort of like a business owner. What would be the legal liability if I miss something?
Yes.
Do I have enough time to cover for that site checking? Do I have the bandwidth and do I have the technical know-how to do all of this stuff in between emails ringing? So sometimes I would like literally just schedule a meeting with some of my really trusted team member and then let them know that it's like, hey, I need to vent, and then they'll hear me out and stuff like that. What about this? What about that? And so that feedback, there are people that will basically say, I think you're completely wrong. We're like, okay, tell me why. In the past, I don't know that I can actually do that.
I think showing as a leader, showing your vulnerability is important. Showing that you're not always perfect is important. Showing that maybe you don't even always have every answer, but you're trying to get to the right answer and you're trying to get to the right answer in the right way.
This could be part 2 at some point. What does diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility mean to you? And how do you integrate that viewpoint into your practice?
I think the way I might think about it is, it's not just giving everyone a plane ticket. It's making sure that everyone can get to the plane. It's making sure that people feel comfortable and welcomed onto the plane. Also realizing, getting from point A to point B on the plane isn't for everyone. Some people might prefer to fly or drive. And it's really about making sure that every person is able to sort of take the journey and be successful in reaching their destination. In terms of how that's been integrated into my practice, I've spent time and effort with the Women's Committee of the PTAB Bar Association, for example, developing with a number of other people on the committee, the Women in the PTAB report, so that people can recalculate it, how many, what percentage of appearances in the PTAB are by women, and breaking that down by firm and by companies, because I think sometimes you think you're doing well and you're not doing as well as you might like to be doing. Doing events like there were some years that we put on an event at the patent office with girls from underserved public schools in DC. They were brought into the PTO, and in the morning, the PTO put on a phenomenal program for them, introducing them to what patents are and things like that. They had a number of really creative sort of workshops they did. And then at the end of the day, they did a mock PTAB argument. So I put together the PTAB arguments, and actually they went into the PTAB hearing rooms and had PTAB judges judge teams of them giving a mock argument. But I think within my own firm, in a sense, we're blessed by how we were formed and, the people that were involved in our formation. And that I hope that diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is a natural part of who we are. And I think that in some instances, you have to work really hard at it. What we've tried to do is create a setting where everyone feels welcomed, where everyone feels comfortable in their own skin, where people can be who they are, can express, who they are, and where, again, people bring different talents and that we can take advantages of every individual person's talent. We started out with an equity partnership that was 50% women. Obviously that's not the only metric, but there are a number of diversity metrics that we, especially for patent litigation, we do quite well. Again, it's about building a team and identifying talent. If you have a setting where people are comfortable and people feel like they can be themselves, then you're not limiting yourself to the talent that you can recruit, that you can retain. We've managed to create, and this isn't just, thanks to the partners, this is thanks to the staff. This is thanks to our associates and counsel. It's thanks to everyone, because a few bad apples can spoil a workplace and can make people feel uncomfortable. But I think we're lucky in that my colleagues are all focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, but also sort of live it and practice it day to day and just try to create a workplace where people feel welcome.
That's amazing. I do think that your words and actions do match. I mean, Groombridge had really been very supportive. And I don't even work with you guys, but I feel very supported in many ways. And a lot of time, even during the PTAB Bar Association has been amazing, supporting because I like to organize stuff. So That's what I do. And then he was like, how do you find the time to sleep? And if something that actually allowed me to make that impact and I can actually do it, I could cut a couple hours sleep. I could get that done. And I also have that autonomy to do it. VPG is sort of like the non-practitioner version of what your firm is trying to do or what has been very successful. And so I'm really privileged to be able to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, Ad.